What's up, cool people? I'm Matt Conroy, and got another Bible-related video topic sort of thing to discuss. And so I'm going to be talking about a couple of verses in particular that I think has led to some confusion for quite a few people in some different ways, even. Like, it's not just one type of confusion around this. So what I'm going to be looking at today comes from Mark chapter 13. I'm going to be focusing on verses 30 and 31, well, especially verse 30. But, let me give you a breakdown of what else has been written in this chapter before these verses come up. So, the entire rest of Mark chapter 13 up until this point, and even this, is kind of talking about sort of an end time situation. Jesus himself is going through some different signs and things that will happen, things for his disciples to look out for to know when he's returning. And also, in addition to these signs, encouraging them to stay alert, to watch out for these so that they won't be caught by surprise when he returns. But the part that gets a lot of people confused is verse 30 especially. Now, I'm reading this in the NIV translation, but I think most others have a similar wording for at least this particular verse. So it says, "Truly I tell you, this generation will certainly not pass away until all these things have happened." These things meaning all the different events and things that he's been describing of kind of end-time-like scenarios surrounding his return. And so there are a couple of ways that people get kind of caught up and confused by this. First off, a lot of people would use this as evidence to try and say that, people from the early church are dead now, so I guess it wasn't true. Let's just throw the whole Bible out and not believe a single word of it and not be Christians or believe in God or anything like that. Some people use it as an excuse for that kind of thinking because it doesn't make sense to them. Some people will try and use this to say that, like, we're in the end times now. Like, Jesus has already returned, and we just didn't realize it, and now, they'll all immediately flash forward to the Revelation of John and look at all that kind of stuff and say, they'll try and interpret certain things in there and equate those with things that have happened throughout history or that are currently happening in the world or different things like that. And I think if we pay a little more attention to how the word generation has been used previously, or just other places in general within Scripture, it might make a little more sense. Because there are other places where the word generation has been used, at least, in certain translations, where, like, it wasn't even necessarily just talking about generations as we understand them. Because the modern understanding of a generation is like, okay, you've got this certain age group that was born within these particular years that, will just kind of all clump together for the sake of research and studies and different things like that. And we're going to try and find the differences between these various generations and how they think and behave and what kind of situations they were brought up in. And I think that definition of the word generation was even kind of created in a sense or developed by like some sort of psychologist or sociologist or something like that. But that's obviously not going to be the meaning of the word generation that's used in Scripture, because that wasn't their understanding. I mean, obviously the English word generation isn't exactly what would have been used in biblical times anyway, but I think what they actually probably meant with the word generation in this interpretation of it is actually just kind of like, almost like an equivalent within people of the time period that would be known as like an era. So I'm forgetting the exact reference, but there's a previous place in Scripture where, at least I think it's prior to that, I don't know, somewhere in Scripture where it's mentioning, like a wicked generation, or, the generation of your fathers or something like that. And it's not even necessarily just referring to a specific generation as we talk about it today, like, millennials or baby boomers or Gen X, Y, Z, any of that kind of stuff. It's more so referring to, like, okay, so there was like just a large group of people in general at some rough period of time who kind of had this thing in common, like talking about a wicked generation or a stubborn generation. And this is used at least once, I think even a couple of times, essentially referring to God's people before Jesus, or maybe even at a particular time within the history of the Israelites. It could have been referring to the whole time period of, let's say, the book of Judges, for example, where people, like, they were persecuted, or, somebody took control over them, and then, like, they repented, cried out to God. God delivered them through a judge, and then they were happy, but then they turned away, and, like, that kind of cycle thing could be what a phrase like wicked generation is referring to. It wasn't just one biological generation, it was like a whole time span, or almost an era, like I was saying before, of people within, God's chosen group of people, but, like, they had a particular thing that held them together, like they were all stubborn and or wicked, or different things like that. So I think if we apply that to this verse in Mark 13, it's kind of more so saying not that that particular biological generation would not die before all these signs and things to signal Jesus' return, but more so just kind of a broader time period of, I don't know, you might call it the church era. Like, maybe it's just something in general that we don't even know that holds us all together, that Jesus is referring to as a generation, to say that, this general era, time period, whatever you want to call it, will not end before these signs appear that you should be looking out for. So, based on, a little bit of reading, and based on other uses of the same word and different things like that, that seems to be kind of where I land, and what seems to me to make the most sense in terms of interpreting this passage and this verse specifically, within the context and also within the broader scope of the Bible. Because I certainly wouldn't feel confident saying that we're in the end times right now. I definitely would not feel like it's a good response to just say, well, guess it wasn't true, so whoop, there goes the Bible. No, like, if you look at generation in the way I have just described it, it still holds up. Now, what exactly that thing is that's, keeping us together as a generation, we might not really know. But, I think that's a much better way of looking at it, and it certainly allows for a broader possibility for that to still be true and not have to question the validity of Scripture. So, I mean, I'm not going to say with 100% certainty that I'm correct on this, but I feel like this is a much better way to look at it than the other ways that some people try and misuse it to either, say that we're currently in the end times or just throw it all out. So, as always with these, let me know what you think down in the comments. There could be something that I'm missing with this. Certainly the fact that I'm only looking at one specific verse. I mean, I tried to consider the broader context as well, but there might be some angle of interpretation on this that I'm not considering. And if you think there is one that plays into this that might give a different explanation, let me know down below, as always. But anyway, I certainly think this is not a passage of Scripture that we should overlook. I don't think that we should try and ignore what's being said here, that we should still be alert and aware of what's going on. And, as other parts of the chapter describe, beware of false prophets / messiahs, beware of, people who think they have the answer, who really are just trying to get attention, different things like that. So anyway, yeah, I guess that's all I've got this time around. Hopefully that made some sense, and if not, ask me a question down in the comments. Maybe I can look into it a little more and give you a better understanding of what's going on with these verses here. So anyway, that's all I've got. As always, like and share if you enjoyed, or if you think this is something that needs to be passed on to other people. And of course, if you want to see more stuff from me, subscribe and click the bell, all that stuff. Leave your comments, as I've been saying. Look down in the description below the video, but not to the comments yet, to see different ways, other ways of keeping up with my social media stuff and all that. You generally know what to do, but if you don't, look down in the description, so then you'll see all that info. So anyway, I guess that's all. I hope you're all doing well, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. But until then, stay cool, people.